Much for joining us today for this month's Best Practices webinar. And I'm pleased to have with me on the line a speaker some of you may be familiar with. He's been our guest speaker before, and it's Mario Montag, who is the founder and CEO of Predikto. And he's going to be presenting today's topic, which is the Industrial Internet of Things, or IIoT, also known as enabling the connected plant. And just for those of you who don't know Mario, he has a very interesting and diverse background, and started as an industrial engineer and then as a management consultant at PricewaterhouseCoopers in the energy and utility place. He's also worked for McKinsey & Company and as a project manager implementing IT solutions in manufacturing and high tech. And then more recently in his 15-plus year career, he founded Predikto, whose mission is to enable organizations to really significantly improve efficiencies by utilizing some of the information they already have. And that kind of segues into today's topic. And Mario, are you with me on the line?
I am with you. And Rona, just reminding you, you asked me to remind you to make sure you're recording. So
I am, and thank you. And for our listeners out there, and I know you like to share these with your, with some others on your team that may not be able to attend live. We do record the sessions, and we'll share the link with everybody at the conclusion of the webinar. And Mario, I just want to wait because we have some people still logging in, and maybe you can tell us a little more. You know, the Internet of Things is a relatively new term, and I know we're starting to hear more about it. But maybe you can tell us, we typically in these webinars deal so often with more operational issues, and though I guess the worlds of IT and operations are getting more connected these days, but maybe you can give us a little more background on what drove you to put this particular topic in front of our audience and why it's important.
Yeah, great question. We we're finding that it's more of a rebranding. Plants have been sitting on big data for years, right? These operational systems from HMI, SCADA systems, or whatever they might be sitting in, have been generating huge amounts of data for a long time. But there is certainly a push that I would say started with the consumer side of devices generating more and more data, like wearables, like a Fitbit or other things. And people are realizing that there's a lot of rich information in the data that those devices have been generating. And that's been kind of being pushed from a strategic standpoint through a lot of these corporate IT departments, where they're saying, hey, we're sitting on a lot of data that's being generated from a lot of our equipment and sensors, and more equipment is being installed out of the factory with sensors generating even more amounts of data. And they're saying, well, let's do something about it. Let's push new initiatives. And the term Internet of Things kind of got started, I would say maybe 8-10 years ago. It really started to take off in the last 4 to 5 years. And the industrial sector has kind of woken up and said, hey, look, we are sitting on a massive amount of information in our plants from our equipment. Let's take advantage of that. So, my interest in talking about this today is that there's just been a new push on the industrial sector of trying to do more with the information that they're sitting on, and the new buzzword that's being used to take on that space and those opportunities is the Industrial IoT, the Industrial Internet of Things. So very happy to be here today, Rona. Thank you for the opportunity, and more than happy to talk to the audience about what is the Industrial Internet of Things and how it can relate to the work they're doing in their specific industries.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Mario. And just before I turn things over to Mario and he gets into his presentation, just a couple of brief comments on the format. I do have everyone's phones muted as because we are recording today's presentation, but Mario has kindly agreed to stay through the entire hour if needed and answer any questions that you might have. So please feel free to type them at any time into the questions box in GoToWebinar, and I'll read them to Mario at the conclusion of the session. Also, I think the session is going to be approximately 40 minutes. and Mario has agreed to make a PDF available. And so we'll have a little survey at the end. Let us know how we did, what you thought of this topic, maybe some suggestions for other topics. But you can also indicate if you'd like to get a copy of the presentation, and Mario will be happy to send that to you. All right, so without further ado, Mario, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you again. Thanks everyone for participating wherever part of the country you're in. So very quickly, from an agenda standpoint, we'll define the industrial IoT. There are many different ways of defining it, so we'll have a little bit of fun with that. And then talking a little bit about the convergence of operations technology and information technology and what that means to your role, to your job within the organization. How predictive maintenance fits into this industrial IoT topic. We'll have a couple of slides on some use cases that are being used out there from Predikto, from ourselves, and from other organizations as well. We'll talk a little bit about some trends and how to get started, how to tap into the opportunities that are available today with the technologies that you're sitting on today in order to improve asset reliability or operational efficiencies within your organization. So, Rona, if we can start with that first poll question, if someone asks you to define the industrial IoT, can you answer confidently? And the choices are yes, no, I think so, or what is the industrial IoT, right? So I'm not having a clue of what that is. So, Rona, if we can take a couple of seconds and see what kind of responses we get, that would be great.
You bet. Okay, the poll is open. Just to let you know, these are anonymous. There's no incorrect answer, but it will certainly let Mario know who's on the line today and kind of help set the tone for the webinar. So let us know, can you answer confidently the question of what is industrial IoT? Yes, no, or I think so. All right, it looks like we've had about 80% of the votes in. A couple more seconds here. All right, let me go ahead and share these with our listeners. So right now it seems that, Mario, 16% say yes, they can confidently answer what that is. 61% say no, they can't answer with confidence. And then 24% aren't sure. And I think that bodes well. I know that, Mario, you and I spoke that this is kind of an introductory, since it's the first time we've done this session.
Yes, yeah. So I think the responses, I'm glad to hear that 61% said no, because for the most part the presentation is high level, introductory. We do take a couple of deep dives, and if somebody would like to take a deeper dive, I think the Q&A section would be the best time to do so. And if anybody needs to have a separate call where we can take a deeper dive, I'm more than happy to be available for that as well. So excellent. All right. So let's define it. What is the industrial IoT? There are many different, boring definitions out there. I pulled one of those. It's the interconnect of billions of devices and equipment, allowing for greater system collaboration and improved operational efficiencies. You read that and you're like, well, what does that really mean, right? The way I would like to simplify it, or at least from a definition standpoint, is look for three things. Look for equipment, assets, devices. Look for those pieces of equipment or devices to be connected through Wi-Fi or through the internet or some other method where the information from these pieces of equipment are being centralized. The data is being sent to a centralized location. And they're generating a lot of information, a lot of data. It could be sensor readings, writing every second or every millisecond, the temperature, the vibration, or whatever other kinds of data that these devices, these connected devices are generating. So those are three buckets that you should look for in any kind of definition as it relates to the industrial IoT. But most importantly is when you take these devices that are connected, that are generating a lot of information, there's a lot of opportunities that can be new things, new opportunities that can be developed. And many of those are yet to be defined, or you're not being sure about what you can do with it. That is absolutely fine. And I think that's part of the heart, the spirit of the industrial IoT, is being able to say, look, we have all this data from all of these devices. What can we do? What answers or what questions could we answer that enable us to move the needle, to improve the way we do things? And it's part of that unknown of the definition of what you can do that makes this whole industrial IoT space a little confusing at times, because you're like, well, what does it mean? And I think the simple answer is it means whatever you want it to mean. What do you want it to mean within your organization, within your plant? So, don't be afraid of not having an exact definition of it, and don't be afraid of failing at trying to do something with that as well. And that's a theme I would like to carry throughout our conversation today. So what is the promise of this industrial IoT, right? The Industrial Internet of Things promises to improve performance by enabling efficiencies as a result of physical assets and products being connected, and more importantly, being empowered by software systems. And I highlighted software systems because a lot of people, step one is to generate more data, to install more sensors, to enable a lot of that data to be connected, right? Rona, I'm getting a GoToMeeting connection lost. Are you still there?
I'm sorry, Mario. I'm still there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Are you able to see my slides? I'm seeing a connection.
You know what? I'm not seeing your slides move. So I think what I'll do is, if you don't mind, I'm going to I apologize for this.
Yeah. I just switched slides to Tomorrow is already here. I don't know if that's what you're seeing.
If I may take a moment. No, we're still seeing the Industrial Internet of Things. So I think what I'll need to do, Mario, is, if you don't mind, I'm going to start the slideshow here.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'll just advance the slides for you.
Okay, because we're connected to the Internet on my end, so I'm not sure what the issue was. It was like a glitch.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not advancing, but I'm going to go ahead and make myself the presenter.
Okay.
If we could. And then I'm going to show, let me make sure I'm showing the correct screen. Again, folks, we apologize. I'm not sure why the screen advancing isn't working, but that's why, just like in operations, we have a backup plan. So let me go ahead and advance and make sure that my screen is now showing. And let me go ahead and advance the slides. So right now, you went through the Industrial IoT, what is it, correct?
Yep. I'm on slide 5, the promise.
The promise. Okay, I'm there. And I'll just do my best to keep pace with you. Sorry about that for our listeners, but I think we're back on track.
Okay, all right. So all I was saying with this slide 5 is that, step one is usually people enable more data, turn on the capabilities that are potentially available in their equipment at the plant level to generate, and store more data from these sensors that are available. Step two is many organizations are saying, well, let's tackle the data. Let's use, predictive or big data initiatives and software to do more with the data. For us, the industrial IoT really has an impact only when software and systems enable you to do something with that information that you're generating, right? So how can I be empowered, or my organization be empowered to take advantage of the data that is being generated from these IoT devices, from these connected devices? So it's important for you to think a few steps ahead, as to what happens after I generate the data, what action am I going to be able to take? So be very careful with that. Rona, if we can go to the next slide, which is number 6, tomorrow is already here.
Okay.
What we're trying to say here is there is nothing that you can't already tackle today. Your plant already has pieces of equipment that are generating a lot of data. They're probably being stored on a database somewhere. It could be an OSI, soft kind of historian. A lot of eMaint customers are asking eMaint, hey, we want to store some of this information, and eMaint is able to build in integrations and capabilities to store some of that data within their software application too. So we're seeing this trend of trying to do more with the data that are already generating, right? So you have the basic building blocks to be able to do something today. And companies that are early adopters of deploying solutions to be able to tap into this richness and this data are clearly going to be leaders within their respective industry verticals. But what's really lacking that we're seeing today is broad recognition and appetite, really, to take the plunge and do something with it, right? And a lot of people are saying, well, I don't know what to do with this data. You don't need to know what to do with the data. Just start. Start by, analyzing, consolidating, and using other capabilities, perhaps around predictive analytics, to do something with that data and perhaps answer questions like, can you tell me when this piece of equipment is going to fail, or can you help me understand why I have, too much variability in batch quality, or whatever other reasons might exist. So, Rona, if we can go to the next slide, which is slide 7, we have the next poll question, which is, what is your job function? Maintenance technician, maintenance manager, planner, or scheduler, if you're on the engineering side of the house, or operations.
All right, so we're going ahead and launching the poll. And I realized in doing so that I neglected to include IT, but oftentimes that is part of one of the other groups. But my apologies for the oversight. Okay, looks like we have about half the people telling us their job responsibility. And it sounds like what this is leading up to is perhaps this is important for everyone, Mario, all right, regardless of role?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, a few more seconds. We've got about 3/4 of the votes in. All right, let me go ahead and share the results. 6% of the people on the line are maintenance technicians, 34% maintenance managers, 22% planning and scheduling, 6% engineering, and 31% operations.
Okay.
So we have about 2/3 between maintenance and operations.
Yeah, and you're right. We should have included IT because this is a very IT-focused kind of topic. So great.
Right.
Excellent. So if we can move to the next slide, which is the convergence of operations and IT. So what we're seeing is that historically, big IT projects were pushed down from corporate headquarters, R&D. If you're a company with more than 3 or 10 locations or facilities, they try to standardize how things are done. It could be the EAM or CMMS system that you use or whatever it is. And many times these corporate folks have a hard time really understanding what's going on inside the plant, right? And separately, the plants themselves have their own operational technology systems, or SCADA, HMI, whatever kinds of systems are used to run the plant, to know how things are operating within the plant. And many of these plant systems are completely siloed. The guys in headquarters don't have access to that kind of information. Well, what's happening with the Industrial IoT is that the guys from headquarters are saying the plant guys, the operational technology systems, are sitting on a wealth of information. I think we can tap into that information and improve the way we do things. And what's happening is a lot of these Industrial IoT initiatives are forcing operations and technology and IT folks to come to the table and work together. And for us, from a Predikto standpoint, from a selfish standpoint, we don't like to engage with customers who don't have operations, the plant folks, sitting at the table as the main stakeholders, as the main drivers. So if you're considering, or if your company is considering and talking about, an industrial IoT, big data, predictive analytics kind of project, make sure operations has a strong seat at the table and ideally driving that initiative. Because if not, you just will not be successful, right? And I think many of us have seen too many failed IT initiatives where it's a great idea, it's a great kickoff meeting, and then everything dwindles down, and the involvement and the commitment is not there from the different stakeholders that need to be part of a successful IT initiative. So this is what we're trying to convey with this very simple image that I created for this webinar. So let's move on to the next slide, Rona, which is slide 9, the connected plant, the rise of the connected machine. What we're seeing is more and more equipment is being sensorized, is shipping out of the factory with sensors. And many companies and customers who already had equipment that were capable of generating a lot of rich sensor data are now turning that back on if they ever turned it off, right? Software and advancements in software and different applications are enabling better interaction between what's happening in the factory floor and these enterprise-wide software systems, right? And because a lot of these, corporate-driven, enterprise-wide EAM software applications, had limited visibility as to what was happening in the plant. So what's happening is a lot of these software applications are seeing the value and being able to store and capture a lot of that information and data that's being generated at the plant level, right, from those sensors themselves. The network of information, of combining this information, will lead to more optimized supply chain, more proactive maintenance schedules, higher collaboration between executives and plant floor supply chain managers, and what we call just smarter automation in general, right? A smarter piece of equipment, a smarter plant, where the guys on the ground are provided warnings or information of ways to be able to run their processes, their manufacturing or whatever it is, better and smarter. There's a lot of quotes out there. I pulled one from the Aberdeen Group, and they're estimating that 70% of manufacturing executives will focus on plant floor data initiatives to drive operational and business excellence. This is them realizing we are sitting on an ocean of data within our plants, and we can do more to maximize how our processes and how our operation is run as a result of the data that's there. So Rona, if we can go to the next slide, 10, which is our next poll question around the industry that is being represented in today's webinar.
Okay. So I'm launched the poll, and again, we only have room for 5 choices. So if your industry is not there, please select other, but let us know which one of these best fits your organization. All right, manufacturing, perhaps oil and gas, energy and utilities, food and beverage, or other. All right, and that was very quick. This one is kind of interesting. Let me go and share the results. All right, so 42%, Mario, said manufacturing. 8% said food and beverage. The 50% were other. And typically we do get representation from the other industries. But again, this topic is, we've been talking about is kind of new and a little different for us. So we definitely attracted a different audience today.
Yeah, very much so. Great.
I
would love to get a little bit of a further breakdown on that 50%. So I guess as people register, I think they have the option of selecting what industry they're in, Rona, or maybe in the comments at some point at the end.
Yeah.
If that is an option, I think it would be helpful to understand the audience that we attracted with today's topic.
That's a great question, just so we know for future. Okay, very good.
Perfect.
Back to you.
So if we go to the next one, slide 11, predictive maintenance. I struggled with the title here a little bit. I called it Predictive Maintenance of the Past, which is which is really what's happening right now, right? A lot of people walking the plant to do their runs, their walks, and find out what's happening on a day-to-day basis. Very manual predictive maintenance technologies around infrared, vibration, oil analysis. These are teams of folks who many companies hire external companies to come in and perform the predictive maintenance routine, document vibration results, draft, type up a 10 or 20 page report. Many times these plant maintenance managers are sitting on a lot of these predictive maintenance reports, and they don't have the time to know, well, where should I focus, right? When will this break down, right? So there's a lot of manual efforts happening around predictive maintenance. Some organizations do have some rule-based analytics, and what we mean by that is, they have warning mechanisms that say if the sensor reads 200 degrees, fire off an alarm or a work order, send a technician out to investigate, right? That is your very basic, bare bones, analytics capabilities around, let's create some rules based on the sensor data that is being captured in the plant. But the reality is huge reliance on people, on humans, on external companies to come in and capture this information manually, create reports, and provide warnings that say, hey, you need to go perform an action. This is the world that we're living in today from a predictive maintenance standpoint. What we're seeing, if you can go to the next slide, Rona, slide 12, what we're seeing from an impact standpoint to predictive maintenance of the future, hold on one second, I'm getting a session ended, Rona, with the GoToMeeting. Are you still there? Rona, can you hear me? Okay. I think I lost Rona. You can hear me? Rona, you're on mute.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, sorry. My GoToMeeting session has stopped. I don't know if you're still going and people can still see the slides.
Yeah, we're still on the air. Yeah,
okay,
sorry about that. I was on mute.
Sorry. Okay. So predictive maintenance of the future, what we're saying is, look, by being able to tap into this rich data, we're able to automate a lot of things. So if you can tap into advanced machine learning, machine intelligence, and algorithms, by being able to tap into the data that these smarter machines are telling you, so that you can go do a repair whenever it's necessary, and do maintenance whenever it's needed, and not because the OEM manufacturer told you to do maintenance every 30,000 hours or whatever that is. Doing less preventative maintenance and moving more towards an automated predictive maintenance world is pretty important. Tapping into the thousands of sensors that are generating a lot of data, and being able to combine that sensor data with human factors as to perhaps who the technician was, who installed the piece of equipment or the part, whether and how often things are being used, and being able to combine data from different sources. That's what the Internet of Things is. Cisco calls it the Internet of Everything, right? Being able to tap into any kind of data that influences the results of what you're doing in your plant or in your transportation organization or whatever it might be. But in the end, I believe that predictive maintenance is going to see a humongous shift and a humongous change towards automation, towards being able to automatically process this rich data from vibration and infrared and sensors, and being able to proactively give you a warning when things need to, when actions need to be taken in order to prevent a failure. So Rona, if we can go to the next slide, which is slide 13, we'll briefly talk about some use cases. So in the case of food and beverage, these are some use cases that we're working on. The ability for real-time monitoring of these printers that print the expiration date on food manufacturing, right? These companies, this printer company, has a high reliability within their printers, and they service the printers as well. So they wanted to be smarter about when to go service these printers and not impact their customers' manufacturing when the printers were not meeting quality standards or were not working properly. So they had the capability to generate a lot of data from within the printers, and they had actually turned it off because they didn't know what to do with that data. Now they're turning it on, and we're kicking off a pilot to proactively notify them when this printer is not going to be working as expectedly, right? And allowing to send the service technician with plenty of time, plenty of notice, and send the right parts to be able to do that repair before it's too late, right? Another example is just real-time vibration and temperature monitoring of motors. We have a very large, one of the largest beverage manufacturers in the world. They wanted to be able to monitor. They have about 1,000 motors in one plant that is used to drive these conveyor belts, and they wanted to be able to have real-time vibration and temperature monitoring of these motors. These motors were connected to a PLC board, but in their case, they installed new Wi-Fi sensors, Bluetooth sensors from actually a partner company of ours, and they said, look, we want to generate a lot more data and have this data be available via the Wi-Fi, via the internet, and being able to monitor remotely when these motors were not going to be working properly, right? So that's exactly the use case that we're doing with that company. Rona, if we go to the next slide, it is the oil and gas use cases. So for this particular slide, we're talking about some things that GE is doing and other companies are doing, right? Real-time monitoring and analytics of blowout preventer stacks, alerting for immediate maintenance required, and what the benefit is to prevent costly environmental and brand damaging spills, or being able to monitor in real-time well analytics and remote controls to being able to improve the and optimize well production, reduce repair costs, and minimize lost production. And a lot of work has been put into turbines and being able to leverage the data from turbines and do predictive analytics in order to avoid costly startup and shutdowns. The whole idea of the industrial IoT is being able to be smarter and be able to send the right person to the right place at the right time to prevent bad things from happening and ensure that your plant uptime is maximized, right? And getting less calls at 3 in the morning when stuff breaks. And none of you guys want that. So that's really what it comes down to. So Rona, if we can go to the next slide, which is slide 15. So there are a lot of investments happening, and unfortunately, many of these investments are not paying off immediately. So I would like to tell you a little bit about some of the things that we're learning, and hopefully you guys can avoid some of those pitfalls. So many times people start by tackling the data, right? By being able to say, look, let's do more with the data we have. Let's tackle it. Let's aggregate it. Let's have a huge corporate initiative, 1 year, 1.5 year project. Install Hadoop clusters. If you've ever heard of Hadoop, it's a big data database of sorts. And tackling the traditional big data solutions. What happens is, after they tackle the data, they look around the room and they say, okay, great, we tackled the data, but so what? What can I change in my job function? What warnings can I give people? What actionable information can I give others that actually move the needle, that impact my reliability or my operations? And just plain tackling the data doesn't do that. So make sure you think about what comes after tackling the data, right? Plant operations continue to be siloed, and many times, they're not invited to these projects. They're not invited to the table So from a plant standpoint, make sure you're either the main stakeholder driving the initiative or a co-stakeholder being part of it. Don't treat this as another IT-only driven initiative and you're just somebody answering questions and providing information. Operations needs to be driving this because you guys know your systems from a plant standpoint. You know your equipment. You know your processes. You're responsible for getting product out the door, not IT, right? Plant systems, from an operational technology standpoint, like data historians, continue to reside only in the plant, right? So if you're installing a new system or enabling new data to be visible from these data historians, these plant systems, make sure that you're able to get that data out. And either to a corporate system or to another cloud-based application that enables a lot more functionality and capabilities. And that's one of the issues that we're running into with some of our customers. They say, look, we're sitting on this data. We don't know how to get it out. So if you're thinking about doing something with the industrial IoT, think, how can we give access to people within the organization or maybe outside parties access to this data to do more? Many organizations try to tackle, try to boil the ocean with very large enterprise-wide solutions. We're seeing very limited success with those because a lot of this, industrial IoT predictive analytics is brand new. So start with a small use case. Start with something that's a pain area and go after it by just, tackling that specific problem. It could be one robotic arm in your plant, or it could be motors in your plant, or just pumps, or whatever it might be. Don't try to boil the ocean. Be very specific about the use case that you want to start with. Have a quick win, and that quick win will give you a lot of momentum to try and go solve other problems later on. Another important piece, everybody is at a very, very early stage with this whole industrial IoT, big data, predictive analytics. You can hear from some of the top companies in the world. You go to their websites, there's so much marketing material on what they're doing, very, very few use cases. So don't be afraid to be an early adopter and try to do something within your particular organization. And 90%, and this is my estimate, 90% of what you're seeing out there is all pure marketing. So when you ask for use cases or you're about to engage with a company, make sure that you ask for use cases and what they're doing, and it's not just them trying to learn on your dime, right? So, Rona, if we go to the next slide, 16.
Okay.
Which is recommended approach. I call this the coalition of the willing, right? Make sure you align operations, IT, strategy, and you're talking to each other and you're saying, let's go do this. Let's carve out a small pilot and let's go see what we can do with the rich data that we're sitting on and that we're not maximizing. Make sure you carve out your budget, but more importantly than the budget is the time and resource commitment, because we see way too many, at least in the last 15, 16 years that I've worked in IT, way too many initiatives fall or fail because people were just way too busy and they didn't have time to carve out to these initiatives that take time, right? So make sure you have the commitment from the leadership that are going to assign the resources and the time that's needed to make these early pilots successful. Aim for quick wins. Don't be afraid to fail, right? Don't start these projects only when you have everything answered. Set a goal, go after a problem, and just get going. You don't have to have everything fully defined and clearly outlined and spelled out, because sometimes you don't know the impact that it can have until you're in it and you're trying to solve the problem, which is a little bit unusual for a traditional IT initiative. I'm also suggesting, don't tackle the data. Tackle a tangible problem that you can measure and track. Tackle something that has been giving you issues. Perhaps you've been having too many, unexpected downtime in some pieces of equipment. Go after that, and see what data is that piece of equipment generating, and what can we do to try to improve the reliability of that asset class or that piece of equipment, right? And then lastly, Rona, if we can go to the next slide, which is our last slide, and we're running very close in time. It's about 11:40 my time. And how to get started. I've touched on these a little bit already. The more data that you're capturing and saving, the more options you will have, right? A lot of these new technologies around predictive analytics and algorithms and statistics, they need data. They need data about your equipment, and they need data about the maintenance that you do that's even stored in eMaint or whatever maintenance system you're using. The more data that you have, the more options you will have to do something with it. Try to standardize how you capture some of the events that are important. Leverage standard capabilities around eMaint condition monitoring or other features that eMaint may have, or whatever EAM system you're using. And if you're capturing reactive downtime, try to standardize how you're capturing that information, right? If you are able to do some root cause analysis, try to standardize how you're documenting that root cause for that particular failure, right? And obviously, being able to tap into the sensor readings from the equipment itself, that's pretty important, at least for the stuff that we do at Predikto. It's important for it to come from the top. Ensure you have leadership's approval, because this will take time away from your normal responsibilities. It's see it as a special pilot project, and you want to make sure leadership is on board. Set clear goals and aim for a quick win. Like I said, don't try to boil the ocean, but aim for something that's tangible, that you can have a quick win, and a lot of light bulbs will go off after that first one. And ensure you have the commitment from all the stakeholders to dedicate the time, money, and resources to the initiative. That's pretty important. So, as a summary, as a recap, you don't need to know exactly what you're going to be doing with the industrial IoT. Think of it as being able to tap into the sensor data, the equipment that you have, the equipment that's interconnected, that you're able to tap into that information that's generating a lot of data to try to solve a very specific problem, right? And that's what I'm hoping you get out of here today. Don't try to boil the ocean. Get started, do something, and try to impact your operational efficiency or asset reliability within your plant. So with that, Rona, I will stop there. We have about 18 minutes for Q&A if anybody wants to stick around and ask any questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mario. I think that was a great overview to kind of introduce the topic. And again, Mario has agreed to stick around for questions, so please continue to type them into the questions box, and I will read them to Mario. And a few that came in, Mario, during your presentation. One was, what are some of the prerequisites for getting started? You alluded to starting small, but other than having the data, are there any other requirements that you can think of that says, I'm a candidate who can benefit from this?
Yeah, usually when we get started with potential opportunities, we ask the very basic question, what problem are you looking to solve? Do you have a very tangible, specific problem where you can put a dollar amount with that problem? And it could be, yes, we have 300 unexpected failures last year costing us $1 million or $20 million, whatever the figures might be. And yes, we have a problem. We've defined that problem. That problem is caused by these different asset classes, and you can carve out a scope. And then the next question is, well, what data do you have related to that problem? Data from sensors, from maintenance history. It could be in Excel, or it could be whatever it is, right? What data do you have that tells me the information about that problem, or about that process, or equipment, whatever it might be? And then the next question is, is that data available to leave that plant system that you have? Can it be extracted? Can it be analyzed by other software, either on the cloud or installed there on the plant, right? Do you have the ability to send that data out every hour or once a day, whatever it is? And then the next question is, okay, in an ideal situation, if you have this problem, you have some data, and you send it to a black box, a magic box of sorts, and this black box is now able to predict when that problem is going to happen. And let's say can you predict when the locomotive engine is going to fail, right? The question that we ask is, can you perform an action? Can you do something? If I tell you this engine is going to fail in the next week, are you able to send a technician with the right parts and do something to actually, prevent that bad event from happening? And if all of those things are yes, then you are a perfect candidate to get started. I think that's, at a high level how we usually approach the qualifying process that we go through at Predikto.
Excellent. That really helps. We also had someone ask if it's possible to get data from these different systems and use it with eMaint's metering system. But maybe you can just talk in more general terms, because I know we have some eMaint clients, but we try to keep these pretty agnostic. But can you maybe explain, paint a picture for our listeners how a company that wants to do this can use your service and also use it into their CMMS?
Yeah, I'm not, an expert in your metering application. I'm guessing that's very similar to other historians that allow you to store meter data, right?
Yes, it will.
Right. Absolutely, right? If you have an application like eMaint or any other that's a data historian for meters and sensor kinds of data, that's the main source of the gold from our point of view, right? There's a lot of rich data there. But usually we have to combine that data with other systems or modules where you're capturing the event that you want to predict if we're trying to predict something. So, and what I mean by that is, let's say eMaint metering is storing all of the rich sensor data, but then in another system, you have your reactive maintenance whenever stuff has broken down, and it's documented in Excel or in eMaint or Maxima or whatever you might be using. So you have to combine those two data sources in order to try and predict when that event will happen in the future, right? So think of it as learning from the past historical data to try and learn and predict when that event will happen in the future. So yes, eMaint metering or any other CMMS or data historian for operational sensor-like data would be a source for any industrial IoT kind of project.
Correct, and I think if I may add on that too, it's kind of this best of breed, and what our software does well is, yes, we can take data and trigger work orders and assignments and track the costs of the repair and provide all of that history and initiate the action. But it does assist, where Predikto helps, correct me if this is not entirely correct, but can really kind of indicate when action is required.
That's right, in an automated
manner.
That's right.
Exactly.
So it's being able to process all this data and being able to say, hey, go do something. This is about to happen in the next 7 days, and doing that in an automated fashion, which is what the industrial IoT is about, right? Of being able to process all this data automatically and do stuff with it simpler, faster.
Exactly. And we had a couple of other people ask, well, how does that then relate to eMaint? And clearly we can interface and accept that data we've worked with Predikto, we work with any type of predictive data, and then our system will trigger the corrective work order from there. So, okay, we have another question. Is there a minimum, well, two related ones. First, as far as the different assets, do you recommend generally looking at most critical assets first? What type of ranking or priority do you suggest when you were talking about pain points?
And Rona, just how to prioritize opportunities and pains? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, if an organization is documenting their reactive downtime, their unexpected delays in the manufacturing process, or it could be related to quality of batches or things like that within the process, and not just a failure of a motor. If they're documenting when stuff doesn't work well, and we can analyze that in a pivot table in Excel or whatever reporting mechanism they use, and we say, well, what's causing you the most pain? And then that would be a great way of prioritizing and say, well, look, it looks like the number one root cause of downtime in your plant is failures in your pumps, right? Let's go after the pump problem first, right? So yeah, we usually look for that pain meter of unexpected downtime and prioritizing based on that. For other customers, it could be related to the quality of batches and help us reduce the number of bad batches that we have, right? So those are, and being able to process all that data and enables you to do that, answer those questions.
Okay, and you touched on this briefly, but so many of our listeners, Mario, are a plant, even if they are part of a larger corporation. Their plant is run rather autonomously as far as equipment and even IT. And so, can you allude again to how this applies when you might have common equipment, but you're just you're the maintenance department for a single plant? Have you seen use cases there that have been successful?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually prefer to start with one plant and don't try to boil the ocean across plants. So we look for a plant that would have a bigger appetite to be an early adopter. Perhaps their processes are a little bit cleaner and they document things a little bit better, or maybe they have an upgraded line of equipment that's generating more data. Whatever it is, we usually like to start with one plant. Usually when corporate IT folks reach out and say, hey, we're interested in doing this, we say, well, we're not going to really talk to you until you have somebody from the operations from the plant on the phone, right? So pick that first plant, and then we'll get started, because we at least personally, we like to work that way. So if you're somebody at a plant and you're looking for a new initiative to improve reliability, bring automation, reduce phone calls at 3 in the morning when stuff's not working well, then yeah, reach out to your plant manager, head of maintenance, VP of operations, and say, look, guys, why don't we try to tap into all of this rich data that we're sitting on, and at some point try to bring in somebody from corporate headquarters, because IT needs to be involved as well, but it goes much better when it's driven by somebody within a plant. So don't be afraid of, if you're just one plant in an organization that has 50 or 100, and you're just a small a smaller piece of a greater entity. We want to start with the small guys. We want to start with one plant. So that's usually what we recommend.
Great. And Mario, before we wrap up, there was one more poll question that had been created, and I wondered if we might launch this in closing about, do you expect the industrial IoT to impact your company?
Yeah.
And will that be all right? I thought it might be nice at the conclusion, after people have had a chance to listen and digest. So if we don't mind, if we're asking you to use your fingers one more time. Again, this is, a fairly new topic in the industrial sector. As we talked about, this is the first time, Mara's presented kind of an introductory to sort of get the thought process going, and let us know, do you feel this is going to have an impact on your company, the Industrial IoT? Yes, no, or you're still not sure. All right, we'll let a few more votes come in, and let's share the results. All right, Mario, it's close to the 80-20, but it looks like 78%, resounding, 78% say yes, 17% say I don't know, and 4% feel no. So I guess we're looking at close to 80% are convinced this will have an impact, and perhaps are starting to move forward, or will be inspired to.
Yeah, just as a recap, when we started Predikto 2.5 years ago, a lot of people were like, struggling to understand what we did. I mean, a lot of people still do, but what we're finding now is there's been a huge pool that's starting to happen, where customers are reaching out and saying, look, we want this. We are ready to do this. We don't know how to get started. And that's great. A lot of companies like IBM and Cisco and others are spending, and GE are spending a lot of dollars, much more dollars than we have, in trying to educate the market as to all of the possibilities that are out there by tapping into the data and the information that we're sitting on at these plants to do more, and to make your lives easier, right? So.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Mario, for sharing your thoughts today and for putting this together. I think it is a very thought-provoking topic, and what you just described was true of just even all predictive maintenance just a few years ago. People were kind of wondering, how does this apply to me? And in just a few short years, it's been so widely embraced. So, and it's great to see that 80% of our audience does agree this is something that's going to have a strong impact. So, again, I'd like to thank Mario for taking time out to, kind of share some of his thoughts on this as sort of thought leaders in this space and some of his experience. And I'd like to thank all our listeners today for participating. And again, Mario has agreed to share a PDF of the presentation. As soon as I end the webinar, we'll have a brief survey, and let us know, how did we do? Would you like to get a copy of this? Are there other topics, perhaps follow-on topics that are important to you? Because we want to make sure we're presenting information that really helps you improve your efficiency in operation. And that's why we bring folks like the Predikto folks. So thank you, Mario. And
thank you, Rona.
And again, thanks. And we're sorry that there were a couple of technical glitches, but I think we made it through pretty well. So thanks, everybody, for your participation. And thank you, Mario. And we'll see you all next time.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye-bye.